All right, as was voted on for our community tasting day, the Aberlour 12-year-old double cask matured Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey is today's fresh crack tasting. Of course, this is from the Aberlour distillery, which is owned by Pinot Ricard, or Chivas Brothers. You might also know that brand. But they also own like Glenlivet and Jameson and all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. And we hate fresh cracks. This is 40% alcohol or 80 proof. It is chill filtered and does have caramel coloring added. And it is 12 years matured in a mix of ex-bourbon barrels and ex-sherry butts. So that's roughly the specs here on this one. And we got this guy here, James Fleming up here. He's the original founder in the mid 1800s. It's a very respected figure. That's why he's still on the bottle. Did a lot of philanthropy in his time. Even paid for a hospital. People don't pay for hospitals out of their own goodwill these days, or do they? I don't think so. I think they do it to make money. Let's see if there's much color difference we put this on here. A little bit. Either way, these Aberlour bottles are a little chonky, so although this one is not waxed, it doesn't look like it. This looks like it's paper. The Abunaz and the Albas are really thick because they have waxed tops. Girthy, yeah, that's all. I kind of like these bottles from Aberlour, these like stubby kind of bottles. I have another one. Yeah, this is the Abunaz, but it's the same kind of bottle. It's like this kind of stout, kind of girthy neck, but this one has like a wax seal. This was a pain in the ass to get open. This one doesn't seem so bad. All right, where'd my good knife go? Ooh. Wax seal on a beer bottle? Yeah. Oh, I remember you getting open some of those temporal ones. I can't tell if this has got a perforated part or not. It looks like it kind of does, but it's like only like right here. This actually might be a pain in the ass to open. I can't actually tell. Is there like a place I can just peel this? No, it's like perforated around here, but there's no way to like get that part open. That's very, very odd. Although now I just think of like that wine sommelier opening those those ancient bottles when I think of like pain in the ass to open bottles. I watched another one this morning and he was opening a $15,000 bottle, but it was like only a 2007, and it was like the wax was like melted to the thing and all kinds of garbage. It was like, holy fuck. And the cork was like destroyed. I was like, you think they would like take some more care when it's a $15,000 bottle of wine? But I don't know. Is this just going to come right off this paper? It feels like this paper is just going to come right off. It's like loose. And it's like a wood top. There's no way that's supposed to be like that. Yeah, see, it's like a nice cap. I don't know if I am supposed to kill all this other shit down here. Yeah, this feels like it's all gonna peel off. Not gracefully, though, of course. It's like all stuck to the bottle. Yeah, I think that happened like with another bottle where like the foil part peels off gracefully and then like this part like leaves this shit on here, and I hate that. I absolutely hate that. But what can you do? Have to get some nail polish remover or something. Use a knife? Yeah, I might later. I don't want to get too hung up about it right this second. Alright, yeah, nice pop on this one. That being said, it's only 40% alcohol, so I'm not like expecting the like most out of the body of the thing. Like it's probably going to be a little thin. But we'll see. We'll see what we can get out of this thing. And again, to a certain extent, when we do these like community polls, I try to pick bottles that are like easily available for anybody to get. That way, if someone does want to pick one up before we do them, then they can. That's like kind of the idea. I don't want to pick some like cask strength, expensive, hard to find sort of thing. So it's a little approachable. Can't spend that money right now? Oh, don't worry about it. Most people aren't crazy like me, or at least crazy about spirits. You got plenty of beers to buy. I'm trying not to go too hard on your wallet, though. I don't want to like ask for a bourbon barrel bait. Random barrel aged $20 bottle every time. Beer is covered by the Twitch money? Eh, somewhat. I wanted to ask for a lambic is what I wanted to do, but I was like, they're kind of expensive. You have a lambic already? Is it somebody else's though? When are you drinking it? I guess that's the question. It's not today, so. I will say the volatile aromas out of this glass are like straight raisins. This is not 100% sherry matured. It's a mix, but the volatile aromas are straight raisins. Like I smell raisins right now. Doesn't say lambic, but it's a Flanders. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of like the Belgian lambics that are like fucking like $20 a bottle. Because even that like sake that I bought, that was like $13 for that little tiny thing. And that was like, I think the ones I had before were like $20 for a little bottle. All right, so here's our spirit there. It's unfortunately colorated, so we can't ascertain too much about the color exactly, but again, it's a mix of ex-bourbon and ex-bourbon barrels and sherry butts. They do specifically mention that it's sherry butts and not sherry hogsheads. That being said, the legs are fairly large, fast running, and that's kind of like what we'd expect. There's a good amount of them, but they're thicker and they're gliding for sure. So it's a bit thinner, but it's kind of like what we expected somewhat. Oh, I don't hate that nose right off the rip though. And again, it's going to be a little less juicy than this one. This thing here is cask strength, right? So It kind of like really slaps. This one at 40% alcohol is going to be a little more tame. The kid comes out here with his tablet and shows me myself. I'm like, yes, that's my broadcast child. He seemed to go out his way to follow me on YouTube, so it's not the kind of content he should consume, I suppose, but I mean, he's in the same room as me talking about it anyway, so it's not like it makes any difference. He's shown no interest in any of the beverages anyway. Okay, the note that I'm getting right... Hold on. Anyway, what I was about to say is this smells like a fruit punch. Like you know, you go to the store and you get that big jug of like that red shit that's like full of sugar, like fruite or whatever. I don't know what brands they have in the States, but like generic bread fruit punch shit. That's what it smells like. Straight up, it's like I can't. It's the exact note for sure. Yeah, it's actually so good. Or like strawberry fruit roll-ups. 99 cents for 2 liters. Yeah. Or or like the Arizona iced tea, but it's fruit punch, you know, the like tall boy giant can that's like $1. Just like generic. It's not Kool-Aid, but like it's almost Kool-Aid. There's no way it's going to taste like this. I'm kind of trying to wait to see if I can get something else other than that. But to me, it's like very strong, red, red, no real fruit juices, fruit punch. There's like maybe a slight amount of spicy character to it, but... And I know that like what I'm smelling is not going to translate to the palate. I'm going to drink this and it's like I'm going to be going in hoping for that like entire day's sugar in one cup, and I'm going to get like something completely different. It's nice though. I mean, it's nice for that. But not much else. I'm not hitting much else right off, right off the rip on this, but that's a good note, I think. All right. Aberlour, 12-year-old double cask matured, and I think this is different because there's also like another one that's like 12-year-old non-chill filtered that's higher ABV. So it will be clear it's the 12-year-old double cask matured space size single malt Scotch whiskey on the palate. Slancheva. It's definitely thin on the mouthfeel. It's definitely a thinner whiskey. Um, you kind of get a little bit of that like sweetness, a little bit of like, we'll say sherry related notes on the palate. It's like maybe um, like the raisin part of Raisin Bran, like those sugar covered raisins. You get a little bit like that raisin character. It's sweet. Um, some spiciness near the end. Finishes mostly a little bit baking spice, a little bit oaky. There's maybe a vanilla component to it. But overall, it's like very, again, it's approachable. It's easy to drink. Um, Smooth. But it's also like not terribly viscous. It's thinner on the palate. And that's just a result of what you get when you have a 12-year-old whiskey that's 40% alcohol. So we're kind of like expecting that to a certain extent. Despite the fact that you do get some distilleries who can kind of manage to pull that off a little better. This one, it's still like not bad on flavor intensity. It's definitely like providing more flavor than like, for example, the Aberfeldy 12 that we tried. To me, that's lesser on flavor than this. There's a more flavor impact. I don't know what the distribution of the casking is between the bourbon barrels and the sherry butts, but it feels roughly more in the sherry direction. You don't really get so much of that kind of lighter orchard fruit thing going on. Still mostly on that red fruit punch. Some like darker sweet notes are kind of coming out though, like brown sugar. There's a little bit of vanilla on the top of it. So it kind of is like one of the things that I find, especially if you have like a bourbon sherry mix, is the sherry casks are like a little bit more heavy handed. Now this one is sherry butts, not like sherry hogsheads or anything like smaller. So you would think it might not be too bad, but it's like mostly the sherry notes hitting at first, and we're having to dig a little deeper to find some of those bourbon characteristics. And the other thing too, with similar bottles to this that I own, kind of like the life cycle they go through is when you first open them, they're like more on the sherry notes, and kind of as you drink them down, like the sherry notes start to turn down a little bit and start to be more tame, and the ex-bourbon characteristics start to be more present, kind of with time and change to the bottle. So right now it's kind of more on this kind of like darker fruit sherry related notes. And I'm kind of like starting to see the peakings of some of those kind of ex-bourbon characters on the nose right now. And it may be more ex-bourbon in the blend than it feels like at first. Just simply that the sherry kind of like takes a commanding seat right at the start. So I'm still like, again, I'm getting still some of that like sherry character, but there's kind of like some of that vanilla and brown sugar, like probably some bourbon influence in there. Although I love this like cheap red fruit juice note. That's wild. I've never had that before. So that's kind of interesting. When we had the Bunnahabhain 12, which is also a mix of sherry and bourbon, that that one came across more like date squares. Like you get the sherry date component, but also like some nice malty characteristics, which like kind of like a more to the distillate, but like it wasn't so sherry bomb because it had some amount of bourbon characters to it. This one is kind of like not on the date square at all. It's like it's like almost like the bourbon cast like elevated the lightened up some of the sherry fruit notes to make them more brighter and sweeter, without like overriding them at all. That's kind of interesting. Although the blend, of course, the blend of the two different barrels is could be different too. Yeah, still mostly that like kind of sweet raisin character, maybe a little more of that brown sugar sweetness in there. You get a little bit of maltiness, growing spice on the palate, and again the finish is not terribly long. Say like either short plus or medium minus. Um, you get some of that. And initially some of that baking spice, some oak characters there. A little bit of butteriness for me right now, which to me is like bourbon barrel associated. Um, and like some vanilla character on the finish too. So it's actually not bad. There's a reasonable amount of flavor on this palate, despite the fact that it's 40% alcohol. And one we can compare it to, I think might make a good comparison, and we can do that right now, is again this Aberfeldy one. But I kind of already know somewhat the differences in these two, but it's not a bad comparison. It's the same. It's a similar casking. So again, 12-year-old, 40% alcohol. This is from the Aberfeldy Distillery, which is owned by Bacardi. Chill filtered, color added. Both things are true. Now this one, I can get a little bit more specific and say that this is 12 years in refill and rechar ex bourbon barrels and hogsheads, and ex sherry butts. So it's sherry butts, just like the Aberlour 12. Now the ex bourbon barrels are barrels and hogsheads. I don't know for sure if they have any hogsheads in the Aberlour blend. That being said, these are refill and rechar, so I don't know if there's any. Again, I don't know if there's any first fill in here, but probably some amount. As far as I know, this 12 doesn't actually have any first fill. It's all refill. That being said, what I know off the rip about this 12 is it's similar, but it's probably going to be less sherry forward, and it's also going to have more of a floral kind of element to it. There's not much of a floral element in this Aberlour 12. And again, it is a Speyside, and for me, a lot of these Highlands, this is Aberfeldy is a Highland malt rather than a Speyside malt, which again, Speyside is technically also a Highland, but it's kind of like more specific. We would call it in its own region because there's so many distilleries in the Speyside. We consider it its own region, but technically all the Speysides are also Highlands. But this is a Highland, not from the Speyside, and those tend to be more floral, more of a perfume nose to it. So I already know that's going to be coming out of this a little bit, but I kind of want to compare just like the palate a little bit, because the palate on this Aberlour seems actually pretty good, and I was kind of like slightly let down by the palate on this Aberfeldy. So I'm curious if is it going to be really clear head to head, or if I'm just like feeling this particular bottle today. All right, so I got Aberlour on your right and Aberfeldy on your left. We're gonna give this Aberfeldy a minute to kind of just sort itself out a little bit. I wish I could kind of use the mini glens, but kind of what I've learned is that you don't get quite the same amount of notes on the nose when you use those little mini glasses. I have like little mini glens like this big, but it's like it's almost better to just pour a little bit of liquid in one of these big ones. It's like you don't really get quite the same olfactory reception of those little ones. We tried them though; they weren't bad. Yeah, this is still giving me a good strong fucking artificial fruit juice thing. That has got ethanol on it still. So we're gonna give this just a minute. There's a note I get when I just pour something that I'm assuming is ethanol because it's like a harsh note that just goes away eventually. I'm assuming that's ethanol. I never like really like expressed that, but it's like I can always tell if it's like too early to nose something. It'll like blast me with alcohol, and it like just doesn't smell right. And you're like, oh, it's not ready yet. There's a slight grassiness to this Aberlour. This is probably like malt related. This is not quite ready yet, but it's getting there. But kind of what I know to be true, I feel like is already true just based on that little bit of nosing. This Aberlour or Aberfeldy is like really perfumey. It's got more of a floral component. But I want to kind of try to dig past that floral character, which I know is more unique about this one, and see if I can kind of like touch on perhaps the casking differences. Now, if there's first fill casks in the Aberlour, it's going to be more cask forward, whereas this Aberfeldy, where if it's all refill, it's going to be more distillate forward. Yeah, the Aberfeldy is like more malty. Again, there's kind of like a bit of a perfuminess. It's like there's a floral bouquet or maybe like potpourri kind of aspect. And it's much maltier. It's actually pretty hard to find the malt on this Aberlour. It's like a little bit grassy around the edges, and if you can really deep in, you can find some of that malty character, but it's almost all in the casking. So I'm gonna go ahead and guess that probably this Aberlour has fresher barrels. Whereas I know this Aberfeldy 12 is all refill. And that's not necessarily like a good or bad thing. Of course, first fill or fresher barrels are more of a commodity. They're going to provide more of a flavor impact. And of course, once you use them, you can't use them again. Then they become refill. So it's obviously more expensive to use refill. And it does kind of give you more of a punch of flavor from the cask influence. But that doesn't necessarily mean like first fill barrels are always better. I know, like for me and for a lot of people, the most unique part about whiskeys from different distilleries is the actual distillate itself, because all the bourbon barrels come from the same giant bourbon producers in the United States. They all give roughly the same notes to the whiskey. All the sherry Oloroso sherry butts. They're all probably seasoned at this point, but those seasoned barrels, you know, they all impart the same similar notes to the whiskey. So what's the most samey thing about two whiskeys is the barrel impact. Now, of course, there's a difference in how they're aged. You know, if they're in a dunnage warehouse on the top or bottom, or if they're in a giant warehouse in palletized racking, it's different, of course. But in terms of what the barrel actually does give, it's very samey. The sherry cask going to give the same thing to this distillery as it does to this distillery, roughly similar. But the most unique part about these two whiskeys is going to be the actual spirit, because that part is going to be completely unique to the distillery that produced it. So you get more of that unique distillery character when the barrel has less activity, when it's been used a few times and it's more neutral. Then you have the spirit retaining more of its kind of distillate characters, right? So just the fact that this Aberfeldy hasn't maybe have as loud a barrel doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be like a worse tasting whiskey, unless you really love like those barrel notes. This one is kind of like hitting me more with the orchard fruit now. And there's just like there's just way more sherry on everything going on with this Aberlour. And the Aberfeldy is kind of like that distillate related fruity character, that distillate related malty character, some of that perfumey character. It's almost like the barrels here are doing very minimal talking. It's like the distillate's talking, and then here the barrels are doing way more talking. Which is a way to, like, again, the Aberfeldy is going to be more unique in that it's not going to have the same notes as the barrels if they were very loud, but it depends on your preference. Of course, the distillate interacts with those barrels in a slightly different way too, so you're not going to get the exact same output, but typically when you taste a sherried whiskey blind, you can tell it's sherried, for example. So we're going to remind ourselves about the Aberlour 12 here. Got a little raisiny, some sweetness in there, a little bit of vanilla, baking spices are present. Actually, honestly, not a bad mix of the two casks. But I'm not getting that much like maltiness out of this one. And yeah, this Aberfeldy is like way more on the malt. Yeah, the Aberfeldy on the palate, way maltier, more spice, not more, similar spice note, but it's not as dark. One thing I'll say for sure is this kind of like AB kind of like did exactly what I kind of felt it would, which is that it highlighted that the actual palate on this Aberlour 12 I think is actually quite a bit more robust compared to the Aberfeldy 12. There's just more flavor on the palate of the Aberlour, and that might be, again, one of the advantages of using like higher quality barrels is, again, if these are the same age and the same proof, but this one kind of got less impact from the barrel and then it's diluted, whereas it's got more impact from the barrel and then diluted. That one with more barrel impact is going to end up with more flavor in the end. So, and that was exactly kind of like how I'm feeling about these right now. The Aberlour holds up to that amount of dilution way better than the Aberfeldy does, despite the Aberfeldy like being more malty and having different characteristics as a result of being in more inert casks. When you dilute the whiskey way down to 40% alcohol and don't give it that much time to age, and you're in really inert casks, you're definitely going to be in a situation where you're going to dilute more of the flavor, which kind of like the Aberlour kind of like made up for with their casks being more active, I feel. Overall, not bad. I do like it. Pretty good intensity of flavor, actually. It doesn't hold up nearly as well as like some particular distilleries I know at 40% alcohol, but did a pretty good job. Honestly, like it better than the Aberfeldy for sure. Not bad.